Elizabeth Lucas, and I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. I grew up there. My mother was from Barbados, who was brought here to the United States as a seamstress, she and her family. And she grew up there in Mississippi. And as they came into Mississippi, they landed on a plantation there. It wasn't a large one, a very small one. But on that area, my mother had no school to attend. There was only schools for the white. But the the wife of the plantation owner there, saw to it that my mother and her siblings be educated. So she went down to the school district and she got books and brought them home to them. Her daughters, which is Lily and Danky Pedway, bought the books and they studied each weekend with my mother and her siblings. So my mother gained her education there, and that boiled down to us, which helped us today. My father, who had to escape overnight from South Carolina into Mississippi, and there he met my mother. My mother was a very small lady, very headstrong. My father was a tall man, very loving to my mother, who was very obedient to her. We grew up there in Mississippi. It was 12 of us. None of us never was in jail. The jail we had was at home, which was the love and the respect and the care and the chastisement from my mother. My father was very little in chastising. Anytime you screamed, he would stop. But my mother was a wonderful lady. She taught us to have self-esteem, and that dwells with me today, and I teach that to my children and my grandchildren. Have that self-esteem. Pride yourself in yourself. Carry on forward the way that is taught into you. Do not dismantle your life for no one else. We can see what Dr. King did. He did not dismantle his life because he was black. So I was taught that. And as we move on in this system of things, we know there is going to be help. This system is shutting down for us as humankind. And we can see each day people's head is getting stronger, but their heart is getting weaker. And what we need to work on is our heart condition. And if we work on our heart condition, things will work out much better for us in this system of things. I'd like to share something here with you, and it's from the book of Proverbs, verse 4:23. It says, above all things that you guard your heart, for out of it is the source of life. Out of our heart is the source of life. And we can benefit if we help our children, not by pounding them mentally, but putting things in their heart to help them out. My mother inculcated things in our heart every day that would make us brighter in our own light, not the light of other people, but in your own light. And that I distill in my children. Coming from Mississippi to California, I've seen a lot of prejudice here. I've been through a lot. I started to work at Capwell's in the 50s as the only black person there. There was much prejudice there. I also went on into banking and accounting in the Walnut Creek area. Sometimes I never saw a black person until I got home and saw my family. But it did not stop me. That did not stop me. And I have to back up and tell you a little bit about my education in the South. I got secondhand books until I was 10th grade. 10th grade was my first year I received a new book to study from, and that was history. That was great history, I thought. But down through the years, I've learned much more about history. And that history is where I stand. I'm a part of it. I'm Black history. And down through those years, getting my education, I got a half a book, and the neighbor 2 miles from me got the other half. Somebody else got the other part. I had to bridle and saddle my horse and ride 2 miles to read the other part of the book. I did that because this is something my mother distilled upon us that we must do, and we did. So out of the 12 children that my mother born into this world and my father, we have school teachers, nurses. One of my brothers became the head mechanic of Gary, Indiana. One became the head mechanic at U.S. Steel in Indiana. We have a minister. We have a nurse. And then I had 2 beautiful sisters who was able to stay home and raise their children. But we all did something in life for ourselves. So this is what I'm saying. Never let a person stop you. Never let this system of things stop you. And I'd like to share this little information here that I have with you all that was distilled in me. And this piece of information excerpt from Locksley Hall by Alfred Lord Tennyson. This my mother said to us day and night. It says, "For I dipped into the future, for as human eyes could see, saw the visions of the world and all the wonders that would be, saw the heavens filled with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight dropping down with costly veil. Heard the heavens filled with shouting, and there rained a gaspy dew from the nation's airy navy, gappling down in central blue. Far along the worldwide whisper of the south wind rushing warm, with the standard of the people plunging through the thunderstorm, till the war drums throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were filled. In the parliament of man, the freedom of the world." So we see who is the world. It's the people. The people is the world. We know that God owns the earth, but we know that the world is ruled by people. All 7 continents is ruled by humankind. So what we want to do within ourselves is guard our hearts, because there is much in that heart to be guarded. So I'll give the floor to the next gentleman.
So, Mr. Smith.
I think so. Being the non-senior activist, I'll also give a little bit of personal history, and I'll try to touch a little bit of the need for education. The need for education is for everybody, but it's really intense, and it's intensified even more so as we move into this next century, the next generations. At my stage in life now, I have witnessed the civil rights, from the Marshall sit-ins at the counters, which they didn't show, to the point that I was actually taken out of Texas because my parents thought I was going to be hung or lynched. It would have been lynched at that time. I had this attitude that I just grew up with that didn't fit in with the ideology, or didn't fit in with the conditions that I saw. And so I talked too much. I spoke my mind too much, and it was like, this boy need to shut up. And so I ended up in California in 1960. I would say some of the main things, like it was spoken here. I had an uncle when I was 6 years old. I had an uncle that I went to visit before he died. He was 106 years old. He was a former slave, and he told me a little about slave life, and he was free. My grandmother died at 103. This is also, excuse me, I'm from Palestine, Texas, from a little town called Palestine, Texas. It's a little county seat town. It's very much like Selma. It's a town that's very much like Selma. People knew their place, and you sort of walk in places where you walk. A movie theater like this, there was a up balcony, and the balcony was for the blacks, and the downstairs was for the whites. But to enter, you have to come in through a side door to the back and go in. But that was some of the conditions that we had. When you start out with them, you really do not notice the difference. When you come to California, you have faced racism, and you know what it is. And then you come to California, and you find that racism is there, but it's much more subtle. It's very subtle, and so you pick it up in little different phases. But I have been many times the only black there, the first black here. That's in my lifetime. Now I'm 67 years old now, and I can say that I have watched the civil rights movement. Everything the film showed, I could relate to. I could relate to even more things. When Viola was killed, the lady in the film, I think she was from Detroit. When they found her body, just little things. In the march, and the film actually stops. The film actually stops a little bit early because Martin had not predicted the March on Washington, which was probably the culmination of any march that we've seen, and that's when he gave the "I Have a Dream" speech, the famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Now, one thing I did notice about the film, which I really didn't know, a couple of things I did notice, that I didn't know that he was having contacts as such with the president. In my time, we looked at it as like the president's over here, we're over here, and I had no idea that he actually did have a take in with the president. So he was talking to the president, and so there was some dialogue going on there. We had expected, in my time, we had expected Kennedy to be the savior. John F. Kennedy was going to be, he was going to be the one that really sort of moved us forward. And Kennedy was assassinated, Malcolm was assassinated, and then Johnson. And Johnson was a surprise because Johnson was actually from Texas, and he was one of those good old boys. But he actually was a surprise, and he actually probably did well for his legacy, except for the Vietnam War, which at the end of Dr. King's era was what he had started to protest the Vietnam War. I guess at this point, what I see and what I worry about mostly is Malcolm predicted. Malcolm asked the question. Malcolm said, "Will we have the ballot or the bullet?" He gave him a choice, and in that case, we ended up with the ballot because that's what we wanted. That's what we were fighting for, was the ballot. But Malcolm always asked that question: will it be the ballot or the bullet? At this point in time, we see that we're getting a lot more of the bullet. And I just mentioned Trayvon Martin and these other little isolated cases, but it seems that we're getting a little bit too much of the bullet. That worries me. That worries me in terms that, as it would have worried Martin also. Too much of that, and then you get the retaliatory reaction. You get that feeling like, I can't take two more of this. It's like the film said, hey, I can't take two more of that. And so, but even today, I worry about that part of it, getting too much of the bullet, and I worry about our young males growing up and not having the same ideology, not having the same desire, not having the same understanding of what people went through to get them to where they are today. I really find a lot of, and I want to say a lot of the young sisters, they tend to catch it. They tend to catch it quicker. They tend to get the idea a lot faster than the brothers. You know, but the same thing, you know, the sisters. I mean, we do have a problem in educating our youth. We have a problem in passing it on. To me, it was no problem. To my generation and the generation before me, it was no problem. You knew, because grandma was going to tell you something, and you could run on mother's wit, and it would take you a lot further than a book. Now, the schools I went to was Frederick Douglass Elementary. I went to segregated schools the first years of my life. And went to California, I went to integrated schools. And I remember just one incident. My mother owned a beauty shop in Texas, and I sent her a picture back of me in my classroom with all my classmates. You know how they give you the classroom picture, and Chinese and Mexican, and I mean the whole genre of races. And she hung it up in her beauty shop. So when the state license lady came in, she saw the picture and she said, "What's that?" You know, her mother told me. She says, "That's the picture of my son. You know, he's in California." They all go to school together. The lady couldn't believe it. I mean, she could not believe that that's what was happening. And that was the time. That was the time frame in which I grew up. Later on, the time frame changed. My mother eventually became an educator herself. She became a teacher in the Pittsburgh Unified School District. And so basically what I've tried to do is when I talk to people, I tried to not so much remind them of right and wrong, but remind them of what has gone before them. You know, what people have done before them. People have died just so they could walk the streets with their pants hanging down. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I think I'll stop there.
Okay, I won't be too long. I just kind of be short because I know some of you may want to ask questions. But I took some notes down. One thing I want everybody to understand is that that the movie and what's going on now is that the movie talked about civil rights, but back when those folks were marching, they had nothing to do with civil rights. They were marching for freedom. I want you to remember that. It was freedom, not civil rights. They were marching for the freedom. And that's what the movie did not depict. First of all, I'll tell you who I am. I happened to be born on a plantation. I don't remember because I came to California when I was 1 year old. So I'm 70 years now. But I was born on a plantation. It's called the McCall Plantation in Donaldsonville, Louisiana. So I'm one of the people who were not born in a hospital like the majority of you folks were. I was not present during, I was an observer of the whole movement. I saw it on TV. So all of the marches, the beatings, the water hoses, I saw it as a child as I was growing up, and I was horrified. So but I had some distance from it because I was in California observing this whole deal. And it was not nice. When I was growing up, the classroom the schools that I went to, the books that they gave to us had nothing positive about black folks at all. Some of these books had big lip, red lip, black women and black men, buckled eyes, black as this thing right here, monster faces. And so that's the kind of things that I had to experience as I was growing up. So I had no positive sense of self. I had no knowledge that we had a great history at all, nothing. And so my self-esteem in terms of about being proud of being black was not there, period. It was not until I learned some things about my people in world history. So, yeah, so, but it was rough though. The Pettus Bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge that we saw, and the water hoses, the police dogs, what the movie did not tell you was that there were 800 black folks who participated in that march. 600 of those were black women. 600 of those were the ones who got beat down. It was the black men who were behind these women. So they're not really depicting the truth there. Also, I want to tell you this, that that there were a group of black men during that time. They were called the Deacons for the Defense. They carried guns. They protected a lot of those marchers. So those folks just didn't come in there and just start beating down people, because they knew that these brothers were not going to allow that to happen. The scene that was outside of this black neighborhood in which the two white priests got beat down, now that would have never happened if the Deacons for the Defense was there. But when we see that scene, it's like the black men are a bunch of cowards. You know, they're in this room. They know that these two white men who are friends of theirs are out there getting hurt real bad and doing nothing. So I really had a problem with that particular scene as to the truthfulness of it. Let's see. President Johnson, he complained to Martin Luther King about, who are these people barging into my office? Well, the people who were there was John Lewis and a man named H. Rap Brown. H. Rap Brown would become the future leader of SNCC. H. Rap Brown was the most feared man in this country. He carried a gun, and it was a short shotgun that he called cracker gun. That's why today, some of you do not know, but he was the one that the U.S. government said that you could not carry any more guns on airplanes. It's because this man carried his shotgun with him everywhere he went. Okay, so he was not being portrayed in SNCC, but he became the future leader of SNCC. He took John Lewis's place. But anyway, I just took a little bit of notes here. Let's see, anything else?
Correction. After he was also H.R. Brown was forbidden to speak in all the northern. The northern cities, New York, New Hampshire, because when he spoke so well that people wanted to move. And one of the things that H.R. Brown did was he formed an alliance with the Black Panthers. And at that point, they shut him down in terms of being able to travel and speak. And after that point, Stokely Carmichael became the leader of SNCC.
Right. So it was Martin Luther King, Malcolm X was the so-called radical.
Right.
Then there was a man who took over SNCC, and as Mr. Smith said, his name was Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael was also a bad man. But he was from Barbados.
Yeah.
Yeah, Barbados. Yeah. But he could not do what H. Rap Brown did. When H. Rap Brown took the helm of SNCC, then it was trouble all over America. All over America. That's when you started reading about these riots occurring,
Exactly.
buildings burning. So you had black men who just did not sit up there and let people beat them down. So, you know, like I said, Google the deacons for the defense, and you'll learn something about these bad black brothers who really didn't take anything off of anybody. But anyway.
Oh, no, I just had a question. So you all grew up in different arenas. So you came from Texas, you came from Jackson, and then came here, and then
Louisiana.
And Louisiana,
Yeah.
but then growing up in California.
I grew up in California.
So you watching the civil rights movement,
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what California was like at that time. Because California was known as the place of diversity, right? The South, like I went to Jackson when I was 10 and still saw someone disrespect my father, and that was in the 80s. And it was, boy, what are you doing, boy? And that's in the 80s. Right. So Jackson was like Selma. That's a tough nut. Still Jackson. I think they just started having interracial couples. So like in the last 2 years or something. So just a little bit about, you know, you tell us a little bit about, but tell us a little bit about the, in that time frame, kind of what you were thinking. Like your age, you guys were young people watching what was happening and what was going on, how you felt about it. And then I'll get like 2 questions and then we're going to wrap it up because I promised them I'd give them their theater back. So,
well, I was never, as I was growing up, I really did not feel racism or discrimination. It was not, I just didn't feel it. You know, because I used to get rides to school from white people, you know, who used to see me walking, you know, late, because I was always late to school. So they'll pass by and their daughters would tell them, stop and pick me up. So I really didn't feel anything until I got, you know, in high school, I think. And it was the first time that somebody had called me the N-word. You know, that was outside of my race. And black folks were saying it all the time anyway, but I had never heard anybody white address that to me until I got into, it was actually in junior high school. And it was like a shock because I was seeing all this mess on TV. And yeah, it was an experience, you know. I don't know if you get it.
So with that being said about the N-word, how do you feel today when African Americans, women and men, young and old, use that word?
I think
they pass it off as if it's
well. I'll tell you what. First of all, I am a retired educator. I taught in Blair for 25 years. I used to teach this word all the time. I used to tell the students that black people. I'm gonna tell you what I tell my students, that black people who use that word are suffering from the greatest brainwashing in the history of the world.